There are two reasons why you need to understand if the decision date for the customer is a fixed date or a soft date. The first is to qualify how serious the customer is and to what extent there's risk that the sale might slip on the forecast. The more fixed the customer has as a decision date, the more likely they really are going to proceed by that date. The softer the need, the more discretionary they are about whether they go forward. The other reason you need to understand what the fixed versus soft dates are is to know what ammunition you have as a salesperson to bring certain issues to the customer's attention as to why they must proceed, why they must take action with you, and for it to truly resonate. So let's talk about the difference between fixed dates and soft dates. I'll start with soft dates. When you're talking to the customer about why they might want to proceed before a certain point in time, a soft date is your price is going up if they don't make a decision by that date. Some salespeople think that's a great way to get the customer to buy by a certain date, but to the customer, it really doesn't matter so much. They know that if they miss that date and then they talk to you several months later, they'll still be in a position to negotiate a pretty good price. So saying that my price is going up if you don't buy by a certain date isn't really something that motivates a lot of action from a customer unless they've already decided, fair enough, I'm going to go ahead by that date anyway. If it suits them, they will. If not, that type of discussion isn't likely to motivate much action in any case. If the customer says, well, we get our budget assigned on our financial year and I'm coming up to the end of that financial year, so it's kind of like a use it or lose it budget. Sometimes that might motivate them to take action, especially if not spending all of their money is something that could count against them when budgets get drawn up for next year. So for the customer to continue having the type of budget that they want, or even to expand it and get a bigger budget next year, that might be considered as a fixed date. There is a date in time by which they need to make certain purchases, and that's something that they can't ignore. So that is sometimes an example of a fixed date. Another example of a fixed date might be that in the customer's world, and this is the difference that you see, most fixed date has to do with the customer's business. So in their world, maybe they're facing some supply problems to their own customers. Maybe they're not doing the type of job that they are contracted to do in the service level agreements of their own contracts with their own customers. And they've been put on warning by their customers. Fix this, start giving us what we're paying for, or there'll be penalties. It might be that some inefficiencies in their current business processes have to change, and that's what they're talking to you about. Maybe your products and services are just the thing to help them improve these aspects of their business so that they can avoid getting fines from their customers. Or it might be that there are some legislative or regulatory constraints that they are facing. Here's an example. A number of years ago, the financial industry had certain compliance standards assigned to it. It's called the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, and it meant that certain companies had to prove that they had certain financial safeguards in place, and it affected all banks and a number of other businesses. They were going to be audited by a certain date to prove that they were compliant to the new standards that were in place. This led to a lot of investment to make sure that they had the right technology, the right systems, the right training, and so forth. If you go back even further, the threat of the Y2K bug was a fixed line in the sand that had a lot of companies doing a lot of technology upgrades to make sure that the transition to four-digit millennial dates wasn't something that was going to shut down their business. So sometimes you'll find that there are fixed dates in time that the customer simply has to take action by. And sometimes they're legislative, sometimes they're based on regulatory or even technical compliance. It might be that the project that the customer is working on, then maybe there's a large project, and buying your products and services is a small component of a much bigger picture. Now, if they have a project plan for this large project, and different parts of that project are dependent on previous stages being completed by certain dates. Understanding where your discussion with them fits into some of these bigger projects and plans that they have can actually help reveal certain dates that they must have certain things signed off by so that they can move on with the bigger scheme of things. So the more you understand the customer's business, the more accustomed you're going to become about understanding what it is that drives their decision-making process and what it is that drives decisions to be made by certain dates. It might be seasonal, it might be contractual, it might be regulatory, but where these exist, it is absolutely fixed that they must get their act together and they must take action by that date. Now, knowing this as a salesperson, can you imagine how powerful your meetings with them can be if it looks like things are starting to slide and that they're not really, that firm about their decisions, to bring them back on point, to bring them back. Well, if you've got these dates in the future, we really need to get this done now so that you can be ready then. This is how you can keep control of that process. But not every client will have these factors in place. And so it really comes down to what other issues that relate to this customer's personal agenda or the reputation of their department or certain key projects they're trying to push through, and talking to them about how neat it would be if they can get these inefficiencies that they're struggling with solved faster, or if they can get these new capabilities that they hope for in place faster, so that you can create a fixed date in their mind by which it's desirable to have certain things in place. If they sign off on that vision and they say, yes, let's do it by that date, then you've helped them create a date by which they're accountable to make things happen. That's a lot better than selling to a customer and not really knowing if there's a need for them to buy by a certain date at all. In which case, if they don't feel the urgency and a more pressing project comes up somewhere else, you can easily find the budget slipping, you can easily find people's attention being diverted somewhere else. So the best defense against that is to make sure they understand the value, make sure that they know there's a date by which that value needs to start flowing, and get them to write that down and commit that that's the date you both agree is where they'll be making a commitment, or you both decide to walk.